Hey, Cypher here, and today I want to talk about a kind of weird subject. Everybody likes to listen to music in some way or another, right? But you would think that there would be something to represent, us history nerds. Well, of course, there actually is. There's a bunch of stuff I can point to that really gets my inner history nerd going. And there's three basic categories. The first one obviously being songs that are historically significant in their own right. Second are things that talk about history. Songs that are specifically about historical events. And third are things that take newer music and transport it into older music. All of these things are fascinating, plus, well, it's music. It's just plain fun to listen to. Now, I probably can't make an exhaustive list. If I miss something that you like, tell me in the comments. Let's turn that comments section into just a recommendation list for good historical geeky music. So let's get into the more specific stuff that I'm talking about.
Right, so first up, I think we have the easiest category of them all. Historically significant songs. It's obvious stuff like Civil War music.
And I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray, in Dixieland, I took my stand to live and die in Dixie.
Labor music.
Every new grave brings 1,000 members way over in that Union burying ground.
Or just plain important to whatever subject you're studying. You'll hear a lot of this stuff in the background of other episodes on this channel. My favorite is always gotta be protest songs.
We shall overcome.
Like all that anti-Vietnam stuff from the 60s and early 70s.
You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting?
Be the first one on your block to have your boy come home in a box.
No safety or surprise, the end. Suicide is painless. It brings on many changes.
Which includes my favorite band, Creedence Clearwater Revival, or CCR for short. And most of their stuff is protest music of some sort. One of their songs has a batch of lyrics that can probably define my entire historical ideology.
Somebody says it's different now. Look, it's just the same.
But yeah, that stuff is too easy though. There's a bunch of lists online of protest music and that, and folk songs and whatnot, so let's not make it easy. What about protest songs against the world wars? Yeah, they exist, and they're glorious. So the First World War actually has a bunch of protest music. I even prominently featured one in a previous episode on the causation of World War I. But I'm more like the ironic ones. The ones that are basically, well, I'm already in the war, so can't really protest it that much, but man, this sucks. A good example would be, Oh, It's a Lovely War. And if you couldn't tell from the name, there's totally no irony in that statement.
Up to your eyes and such, using the kind of language that makes the sergeant blush. Oh, wouldn't join the army, that's what we all inquire. Don't we pity the poor civilians sitting around the fire? Oh, it's a lovely war. It's a lovely war. Wouldn't be a soldier, eh? Oh, it's a shame to take the pay.
So they're acting like they're Teddy Roosevelt going off to fight in Cuba, when we all know what that war was like. Of course, the most potent one that I could find is called Hanging on the Old Barbed Wire. And funny enough, Chumbawamba, as in that one band that made this song, yeah, those guys recorded this. But interestingly enough, something that a lot of people don't realize about Chumbawamba is that they're actually an anarchist punk band, and they kind of got pissed off at the record label, and that's why they made that. So this is more akin to their other work. So it starts off talking where they can find higher ranking people in and around the war, in pretty ironic positions.
If you want to find the general, I know where he is. He's pinning another medal on his chest. If you want to find the sergeant, I know where he is. He's drinking all the company rum.
But it ends with where you can find somebody of the rank of private.
If you want to find the private, I know where he is. He's hanging on the old barbed wire.
Oh yeah, that's dark. So World War I's pretty easy. Let's move on to World War II. Yeah, there's actually protest music against World War II. Now, along the same line of ironic music is actually a song that was pretty popular at the time. It took a song that's been remixed any number of times, starting with John Brown's Body Lies a Mouldering in the Grave.
John Brown's body lies a mouldering in the grave.
Then moving to the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And finally, Blood Upon the Risers.
He was a mess, they picked him up and poured him from his boots, and he ain't gonna jump no more.
Yeah, this one's pretty dark too. But interestingly enough, it's still used as a theme song among airborne units.
Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
What a hell of a way to die indeed. But you wouldn't think that there would be anybody directly protesting US involvement in World War II as a popular song, but you'd be wrong. There's a few of these, and they're a lot more scarce than compared to World War I, but my favorite has gotta be the Almanac Singers. Their song, The Ballad of October 16th, is mostly complaining that conscription was passed before Pearl Harbor ever actually happened.
I promised her to war I'd never go. Now I'm wearing army greens and I'm eating army beans, and I'm told that J.P. Morgan loves me so.
But you could tell that they pretty much knew that the US was going to war.
Now Franklin Roosevelt told the people what he felt. We damn near believed what he said. He said, I hate war, and so does Eleanor, but we won't be safe till everybody's dead.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're not fans of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now we could be here all day just talking about historically significant music, but a lot of it isn't something that I'd listen to on a regular basis, or for fun. So instead, let's go to music that at least I'd listen to on a regular basis, but it's kind of a different category. It's songs about historical subject matter. It's just regular music, but is about historical subject matter. Or you could call them based on a true story songs. So since we're on YouTube, I'm guessing most of you have probably heard of this. It's just plain obvious, epic rap battles of history.
What's up, bitches?
I don't think I really need to explain them, but if you haven't heard of them, go check them out, they're awesome. Especially the ones that they did on the philosophers. I think that was their best episode yet. But speaking of rap battles that are famous on YouTube, a lot of people might not have heard of Econ Pop. They've done 2 rap battles facing off 2 famous but fairly opposing viewpoints on economic theory, mainly Hayek versus Keynes. Now it's pretty obvious which one they favor.
Give us a chance so we can discover the most valuable ways to serve one another.
But they actually explain these theorists really well. So let's move on to rock music. There's obviously a lot of famous rock songs that are about historical events.
In the winter of 65, we were hungry, just barely alive. By May the 10th, Richmond had fell.
But there's only one band I know of that is entirely devoted to it, and is a heavy metal band of all things, Sabaton. Oh yeah, these songs can really get your blood pumping. They even did an entire album about last stands, with tracks going on about things like the Battle of Shirayama, which The Last Samurai actually depicts, although poorly. In Sabaton's depiction, they kind of fall into the same problem that The Last Samurai did. But I can't really get mad when the song just basically exists to mention the historical event rather than, like, analyze it or flesh it out. The title track of that album is about something I didn't even know about before listening to it. The song itself is about the defense of the Holy See in 1527 during the sack of Rome. And while the Swiss Guard who were defending the Holy See ultimately were defeated, 189 dudes managed to fight off tens of thousands of Holy Roman Empire troops who were going after the Pope, and the Pope managed to escape. Funniest thing about this song is when I'm riding around in my Jeep that doesn't have doors most of the time, it sounds like I'm listening to religious music. But I'm actually listening to something that drenched the Vatican in blood. Sometimes I have to wonder what people think when they hear it. Yeah, this is some epic music. And of course, their most epic song is also about what may be deemed the most epic battle in history. And if not the most epic, at least the biggest. Kursk, as in during World War II in Russia. Yeah, we here in America tend to focus on the Battle of the Bulge, but Kursk was much more important, and had the equivalent effect on the Eastern Front. This stuff is just too good. So let's jump over to a different genre, which is folk music. Now you can find all kinds of folk music that actually tells historical stories.
Later that night when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
But I want to put a spotlight on somebody who just doesn't get enough attention. This guy named David Rovix is like a modern day Woody Guthrie. He does a whole bunch of protest music and does a lot of it on YouTube. And he just pumps this stuff out. It's amazing. And so he's done a few on historical subjects. My favorite being the Battle of Blair Mountain.
1921 was the year. Seems like yesterday to me. Let me tell you about what happened then, back in the mine country.
This happened in 1921 in West Virginia, in the largest American internecine conflict since the American Civil War.
We dug trenches and wore helmets that we brought from the Argonne. All the way from France to Logan, we fought from dusk to dawn. President Harding sent in the army, and we left our line to them.
Yeah, that really happened. He's even accurate enough that I actually quoted him at the end of a historiography paper I was doing on the subject. Actually, a funny thing that I like to do in a lot of academic papers is slip in pop references as if they're scholars philosophizing on the subject. Because that's the interesting thing about a lot of these guys, especially David Rovix. They're able to shove a lot more meaning into their stuff than a historian can in a 40-page paper. But there is one song that I've actively tried to get professors to listen to, and it's by a band called Pig with the Face of a Boy. They're really only famous for this song. I just call it Tetris history.
I am the man who arranges the blocks that are building a highly secret base. Hip hip hurrah for the USSR, we are sending our men to outer space.
And there's so many layers to this. They take the famous song from Tetris, which is actually an old Russian folk song, and then tell the entire story of the Soviet Union.
The food on your plate now belongs to the state, a collective regime of peace and love.
Yeah. And you gotta remember, Tetris was created by a Soviet citizen. So they managed to recontextualize both Tetris, the song, and tell the history of the Soviet Union.
I am the man who arranges the tanks that will make all the Nazis keep away. The Fuhrer is dead and Europe is red. Let us point all our guns at the USA.
Obviously, they have to oversimplify quite a bit, but they do a pretty dang good job. And they even get a little bit predictive at the end.
But now that Putin's put the boot in, who'll get in our way? So we reject free enterprise, and once again the left will rise.
I've listened to this song so many times that I've memorized it. This thing is awesome. And I can't really come up with anything to beat it in this category. So let's just move on to the next, which is remixing. Now, most of the time when you think of remixing, it's some new thing trying to take samples from an older song and use that.
It'll rain a sunny day.
Sometimes it's great stuff, like with how many times you've heard The Werewolves of London.
I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand. Big wheels keep on turning. It was 1989, my thoughts were short, my hair was long.
Yeah, somehow that devolved to Kid Rock. Sometimes these things can get a bit jarring. Like this one.
What the heck do the monsters have to do with that?
And of course, this is a pretty common practice, but this isn't what I'm talking about in terms of getting the history geek in me all riled up. No, it's what I've heard termed downmixing, as in taking some newer style thing and making it older. My best example of this is Electro swing. Basically, they take techno and swing music and mash them together. It's a whole subgenre, and too big to name everything. But here's a list of stuff. You've probably actually heard this music in the background of my episodes all the time. It's even in the channel trailer. But unfortunately, it seems to be dying out. The two biggest names in the subgenre, mainly Caravan Palace and Parov Stellar, have both been kinda moving away from this subgenre into more mainstream stuff. And I'm always looking for new stuff, but it just seems to be dying out. But one that isn't is taking newer pop songs and turning them into other things. You'll find a couple of guys who turn lyrics from these songs into history lessons. Unfortunately, the two that I know have really close names. One's Mr. Betts, who's gotten pretty famous recently for this, and the other is Mr. Beat. Both of these guys you should go check out, especially considering I collaborate with Mr. Beat all the time, and will do so in the future. But don't worry, you won't be hearing me sing. He actually does a lot of stuff around history subjects, which you should totally check out. But instead of remixing lyrics, there's a further one that has one standard bearer. The group is called Postmodern JUKEBOX, which is just a perfect name for what they do. Although you can find some older stuff from the person who organized the group, named Scott Bradley. Now, they regularly put out stuff which essentially takes new top 40 stuff and puts it in older styles.
But she's touching his chest now. He takes off her dress now. Let me go.
The best video to start off with is one that they did for Cosmopolitan magazine, which actually combines a bunch of their stuff in an office setting of all places. This is a great video. Funny enough, they even turned this into Electro swing.
I'm gonna pop some tags.
Got $20 in my pocket.
Yeah, they have a bunch of stuff and they keep on putting it out. But this is their most amazing song. Simply because the singer, whom they regularly rotate, plays a bunch of different instruments herself while also singing. It's amazing. So can you guess what that song is, though? It's this.